Rev up your engines! Today I'm going to talk about a common car air conditioning problem and how you can fix it. The problem is this. Say the passenger side is blowing cold air, but the driver's side is not blowing cold air. Now in an old car like this 94 Celica, it's a simple air conditioning system. It doesn't have dual controls or anything. It's got AC, you turn it on or off. Then it's often a very simple problem, just being low on refrigerant. Now this may be a 26-year-old car, but I've only had to add refrigerant one time. Now here's an old broken AC compressor. All air conditioning compressors leak somewhat over time. The fan belt spins the shaft. The shaft has to have a seal on it. If that seal was perfect, it would run dry, burn out, and all the freon would leak out. They all leak a little bit of refrigerant and AC oil in order to lubricate that seal. Now in the case of Toyotas, it's often a very slow leak. I mean, I've only had to add refrigerant to this thing once in 26 years. So it's a very slow leak. But when it leaks out enough, it will affect the performance of your air conditioner. And if you understand how air conditioners work, it's totally logical. The compressor compresses the refrigerant, it's hot. Then it pushes it to the condenser in the front, which gets hot air. Hot air gets blown away. Then that gets sucked into the evaporator inside the dash that expands and gets cool air. Then it's sucked back into the compressor in an endless cycle. And since most cars have the evaporator on the passenger side, if you're running low on refrigerant, the passenger side can still blow somewhat cool, but by the time it makes it over to the driver's side, it's not cool anymore. So just being low on refrigerant can make it do that. So if you know how to use AC gauges, you can hook them up to see if you're low on refrigerant, and if you are, you can add some. And if you don't, you can just pay a mechanic to check it. Doesn't take 5 minutes. And here's a money-saving tip. Guys are always trying to sell people stuff. Say you're low on refrigerant, they'll say, oh wow, your compressor's leaking, you need to buy a new one. Before you spend a whole bunch of money, if it's been years or if the system never has had any refrigerant added, first, just add some refrigerant. I've done that on cars, and sometimes they last 5-6 years before they stop working again, and then you just fill them up once every 5 or 6 years. Always start simple and work your way up. And if you do add refrigerant, if your system doesn't have any of that leak dye, a lot of them are made with leak dye, but if it doesn't, you could add a little bit of the leak dye in too. So then when it finally leaks out, you'll see the dye coming out of the area and you'll know which one is leaking. Now many cars just have the single AC system. Even this relatively new Matrix, it's got a single system. Cold on one side, not on the other. Odds are you're just low on refrigerant. But if you have a more modern dual control system where you control the left side and the right side independently, like this Lexus, then things can get complicated. Because here, as you can see, you can adjust the driver's side from cold to whatever temperature you want. And the same thing on the passenger side, you can adjust that too. Now here, of course, you're dealing a level of sophistication all run by computers that can make your head spin. But basically, here's how it works. The computer system takes the inputs, there's temperature indicators inside, and inside the dash are blend doors that open or close to a certain degree to make it whatever temperature you set it here. Now, of course, a lot of it's fantasy. You put it on 69 degrees. It's not going to stay exactly 69, but you can make it so one side can be as hot as you want. In this case, we'll go to hot, or the other side can be as cold as you want. And in that case, the passenger side, it would turn the duct to the heater open using the actuators that open the door, so you'd have hot air blowing here, but on the driver's side, it would only open the actuator for the AC system, so cold air would come out here. And you can guess what happens with computer actuated systems when they break. I mean, thank heavens this is a Lexus. They hardly ever break, so I don't have to mess around with it. But when they do break, unfortunately, you're gonna have to find a guy like me that has one of these really fancy computers to access that data, to do bi-directional testing. I'll show you how it works on this Lexus. Well, the beginning's easy. It just plugs into the data port, plugged in. Then we put on the car and we're looking for stuff for the air conditioning system. Well, the air conditioning system on this particular one is part of the body system, so we'll push body. It's got all kinds of information, like it's showing that the magnetic clutch is off now because the AC just is cycling, and in a second there, now it's back on again. You get all kinds of data you can analyze, and that's various active tests that you can do too. Now, of course, if you don't have one of these fancy scan tools, good luck trying to figure out what's wrong if one of those blend doors is breaking. Plus, most of the time, it'll be something like an actuator motor, You got to take the whole dash of the car apart to access it. Repairs can easily top $1,000 on many cars these days if one of those stupid little doors breaks. But here's another tip that might save you a ton of money. Let's say you're having electrical problems. The first thing I advise all my customers to do is have the battery load tested and have the alternator load tested. Many auto parts stores do that free. You can even buy a quality thing to test it yourself these days for $70, $80. You don't have to buy an expensive one like this Midtronics. This thing was over $800 when it was new. Today, you can get $60, $70, $80 versions from other companies that work quite well. Realize that all computer controlled systems require a steady, accurate supply of voltage. If the voltage goes too low or too high, squirrely things can happen. If you're cold on one side and hot on the other, maybe there's just not enough power going to the other side. Always check the battery and alternator before you start spending a ton of money doing computer analysis and tearing the dash apart. And here's another trick. Let's say this side's blowing cold and this side's blowing hot. Well, the actuators are up in here. Sometimes just going whacking the dash really hard. If it's a stuck actuator, a lot of times they'll on stick. I've had some customers that drove cars years that way. When it wasn't cold on one side, I'd give it a good whack and it would start working again. Realize those stupid doors are generally made out of plastic and they can stick as they age, and if whacking works, what the heck? So now you know a bit more about car AC systems and what you can do if you've got hot air blowing out of one side but cool air come out of the other. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.